All right, this is lesson number 7 of the Zero to Hero Dataverse quest. And today we have none other than Danish Naglekar, the Power Maverick. I mean, you've probably seen him around everywhere, actually, when it comes to Power Platform. Lots of cool stuff he's putting out there, VS Code extensions, XRM toolbox plugins. He's got his own book on PCF development. I mean, the man is a beast. I'm not going to take much time from you, Danish. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Victor, for that nice introduction. So, yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of things for the community, and mostly my focus is to improve the pro dev side of things, improve how you do your coding, right? And in nice industry standard formats, how you can use industry formats in your codes as well, right? What are the industry standards when it comes to Dataverse? I've seen over the over this 10-15 years, what I've seen is some of them like to use shortcuts, but then there are always shortcuts are good for short period of from time, but then they always hurts you in the long run. So how you can improve your coding, how you can improve your standards, and how quickly you can do things in a nice industry standard way. And that's why I try to create tools which can automate those things and where you can use industry standards in your codes. That's what my motivation is always for in the community. So today we are going to look at how to go from zero to becoming a hero in JavaScript. Yeah. So so what we're going to look in today's session is, first, we are going to look at what basic JavaScript covers, right? And then how you can create a web resource. And once we understand the functionality of JavaScript and how we can create web resources, then we are going to dive into something called as multi-level namespacing and why is it important to use multi-level namespacing. Then we would do some form customizations and then add our JavaScripts on the forms, trigger it on the events, and then run through some scenarios. And at the end, we would be doing some ribbon customizations. Now that's what is on the agenda, but then if time permits, then we can also dive into some of the TypeScript sessions as well. So let's see how far we can go. Okay, so not taking much time, let's just do a working session. Yeah, so this is a demo. And let's see, bring up my Visual Studio Code. Okay. So I normally prefer Visual Studio Code, but you don't have to. You can always use Visual Studio as well. Uh, it JavaScript works on both IDE. IDE is called um, Interface Development Environment or something like that. Yeah. So this is my IDE. I normally prefer Visual Studio Code for doing JavaScript, for doing any of the UI, UX kind of things, or developing front end. I normally use Visual Studio Code. So here you can just right click and then say new file and then say demo.js. Once you do that, then simply if you want to get started with, or if you have never done JavaScript, the Visual Studio Code actually helps you with a lot of those things. So like if you want to create a function, you can just say function, and it gives you this function statement. If you click on it, it tells you how you should be writing your function. So you already have function, then you have the name, and then you can provide your name. So in this case, I'm going to say demo, maybe not demo, maybe onload, and then parameters. So use your tab to go to the next next thing, and you go to parameters, and then you can say, okay, this is going to be my execution context. I'm going to explain what execution context means in Dataverse in a minute, but that's how easy it is, right? If I want to create variables are all created as var. Because JavaScript does not have data types, everything is a variable. So you can say var form context, and then that's it. right? That's your variable. That's how you define your variables. And then you define your functions over here. Okay. Now, with respect to Dataverse, Dataverse is a little tricky because what it does is, now I'm going to switch over to some Microsoft documentation here. So this Microsoft documentation link, I'm going to paste it in the Teams chat as well. Oh, I don't see the chat. Victor, have you removed the chat functionality?
Yeah, I think because I started this as a meeting for the channel.
Oh, okay, that's
But
fine.
I'll
I
keep an eye
can.
on it. And if folks have questions, you can raise your hand or maybe leave it for the end.
Yeah. Oh, there is already a hand. Pranav, go ahead.
Hi, Danish. When you're on Visual Studio Code, please could you zoom in a little bit?
Sure. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
I just have to figure out how to do that.
Maybe if you have the wheel on the mouse, you can hit Control and just.
I did that. It didn't work. You know, there's oh, you know what?
Or Control Plus.
Control plus. Oh yeah. Alt plus or Control. There you go.
Perfect.
Is this good enough?
That's good.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So so going back here, and let me zoom in on this one as well. Okay, so this is the documentation that so we are looking at client-side scripting. JavaScript is called as client-side scripting. Plugins are called as backend logic, right? Plugin is going to be covered in the next session by Mike, and I'm covering the client-side scripting. So client-side scripting documentation is available from Microsoft. So what it does is it gives you all these references that you have. Now, if you want to get started, you can always go here and then look at all the available documentation. But most importantly is looking at the execution context. So execution context is nothing but onload. There you go. So onload actually gives you something called as in parameter. You get this execution context. And execution context is the way we interact with the form. So anything on the form, like attributes that you see on the form, like if I want to get the name of this field, then I have to utilize something called as form context. And the way Dynamics provides that form context to us is through that execution context. And that execution context is something that we would be configuring when we configure our events. So basically what we do is whenever we provide our functions, we provide at least one parameter called as execution context. So if I'm writing function on save, then I will write execution context here as well. And then once I have execution context, then I can get the form context. So form context is another variable that is provided from the execution context. And the way you do that is you write form context is equal to execution context dot get form context. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. Now, once you have the form context, then you utilize this form context to get this names probably. So if I want to get this name, I can get that name saying variable name is equal to form context dot get attribute, because that's an attribute on the form, right? This is an attribute on the form. And then I have to provide the name of the attribute. So how to get the name of the attribute? I use this tool from Natraj called Level Up. It's a very nice tool. If you install this and if you're on the Dynamics form, and you can utilize this tool to say, get me all the logical names on the form. And that's how I can get all these logical names of all the attributes that are available on the form. I copy this logical name, go back here, and then now add my logical name here. Now, once you get your attribute would be getting entire thing associated to that attribute. So attribute name, attribute value, whether it is disabled, whether it is enabled, those kind of things. This is what that function will provide. So how do I know this? Yeah, that's a question. So if you go back to this nice little documentation, you can see all these things are available over here. So if I go to attributes, then I can get attribute functions. You can see add on change, get attribute type, and then you can also see get value. Yeah. If you click on attributes here, you would get an overall explanation of what attribute actually means. And then you can also see then there is something called as controls. And you can click on controls and then see what controls means. So what is the difference between control and what is the difference between attribute? Those kind of things can be identified from this documentation. So if I go to get attribute, get attribute has something called as get value. Okay, get value is pretty simple. And here is the syntax, right? So form context dot get attributes and then get value. Get value will give you whatever the value is on the form, which is in this case, it is Iron Man, right? So going back to the code, I can say dot get value. Yeah. And that is how I can create my onload function. Now let's do something with this onload function. Let's just not stop here. So what I want to do is, next thing I want to do is I want to show some kind of notification. So if you are familiar with some notifications that shows up on the form in Dynamics, that is called as form notification. So how do we show form notification? So going back to the documentation here again. So form notification is something which is part of the UI. Okay, so as you can see here, you will see something called as UI. So let's just dive into it and then see what all things are available in UI. So UI has this clear form notification, get form type, refresh ribbon, and it has something called as set form notifications. So let's just see what set form notification is. So as you open this up, you can see that it says you can display any number of notifications on the form and a lot of text that is available here. But you also get this nice looking syntax. So I'm just going to copy it as is, right? And paste it over here and say now, OK, what is message, what is level, and what is unique ID? Let's go and read about it. So in the parameters, you can see message is what gets displayed as a message to the user. Level is there are 3 levels: error, warning, and info, right? And then unique ID is something that you can provide where you can utilize it to clear the notification whenever you want to. Now, all of these are required parameters, which is indicated with this field, right? Or with this column. So now we know that everything is required. So we have to provide everything. So let's just say provide some form notification. And the other thing to use in JavaScript when so what I want to do is let me show you how I want my notification to look like. So I want my notification to look like, going back here, I want my notification to look like Iron Man is powering up or something to that effect, right? So it should say Iron Man is powering up. Okay, that's what my notification should look like. But what if I go to some other superhero like Airwalker? So now my Iron Man is powering up would not look good on this form, right? I want this to make it dynamic. I want to make sure that I'm capturing the name of my superhero and then showing that name here. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to delete this. And instead of using double quotes, I'm going to use something called as tilde. Tilde is a key that is above your tab and next to left to your one like number one key. Yeah, that's called tilde. You don't have to use shift. You don't have to use any other like control key or alt key, nothing. Just press that key that would show up like this on the screen. Yeah, that's called tilde. Now, the nice thing about tilde is if you're using double quotes, you have to concatenate different things using plus sign. Whereas in tilde, you get a nice string builder functionality, and you can do that using tilde, then dollar symbol, and then opening curly braces, closing curly braces, and then whatever you write in between this is the variable name. So I'm going to use name from the variable, and then I'm going to say powering up. Okay, so that's a nice thing to build your strings. So instead of using plus symbols and trying to concatenate strings, try to use string builder functionalities. Okay, using in JavaScript, it is by using tilde. Then the second parameter says about level. So going back here, you can see that we want to use one of this level. So I'm going to use info. And then some unique ID. So superhero name. Okay, so that's my demo file. So once my demo file is created, I can upload it to JavaScript, also to my Dataverse. So let's go to Dataverse. So here is my my solution. So let's go back here. So this is my makers portal, right? make.powerapps.com. You go to your proper environments, then you go to solutions, and then you open up, you either create a new solution or you open your existing solution. In my case, I already have a solution called Zero to Hero. I'm going to go inside that, and then I am going to add a new web resource. So if I click on new, go to more, and then I see web resource here. Okay. JavaScript is a web resource, image is a web resource, HTML is a web resource, right? So all of those are web resources in Dataverse. So I've created my file. I'm going to upload that file here. Okay, so I go to demo, I see this demo.js. I'll give name here. Um, demo. And then the way we provide names is we give folder structures normally. And the way you provide folder structures in your name is by using /, and then the industry standard. Now, some people follow it differently. So depending on whatever your naming conventions are, you can provide that names. I normally typically follows as / scripts. Then if there is a namespace, or if it is for a certain group or certain team, then I will provide the team name. So in this case, I can provide 0 to hero. Yeah. And then it's followed by which form I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use this on the superhero form. I'm going to write superhero. I can actually do this as well. So forms / superhero. Sometimes I do forms depending on with whom you're working with. Sometimes I don't use forms. So I'm just going to keep it superhero.js. Yeah. And it's a JavaScript file. It automatically detects as soon as you upload a file, it will automatically detect what is the type and then select the type for you. Okay, and provide a description here and then hit save. Okay, so my script file got uploaded here. So let's go to the table, superhero table, go to that form. And then we'll open up the form here. Okay, so you can click on it, which opens up the form. I normally prefer opening up in a new tab so I don't lose the context and I can do multitasking. So I open it up in a new tab. And once you are in this new Maker portal, then if you're not familiar with it yet, then there is something called as events where you can hook up your form libraries over here. So you can go to events, but before you go to events, you have to upload your form library. And form library is nothing but the script file that you just created. So I'm going to go to form libraries and I'm going to click on add a library. And it shows you have to search for JavaScript library only. Now here I can search for demo. And it takes a long time to look through all the web resources. And there you go, 0 to hero demo script, right? So I'm going to select that and then say add. And that appeared over here. Now, while I have my library, now I can head over to my events. Now going back to the file again, just to make sure we understand where we have to put the event. So event, because we are expecting this to run this function on load, right? That's why I named it as onload. So in the event, I'm going to use the onload event. Okay, so I can go to event handler, the onload event. This library was produced from here. But if I have to select a different library, I always get a dropdown. I can choose proper library. And now I have to provide the function name. Now the function name would be this function name as is copied. Yeah, so I'm going to say onload. And then see how we provided that first execution context as a parameter. This is what we have to do. We have to say pass execution context as first parameter. Okay, we can supply additional parameters from here as well. But in our case, we have not done that, right? So we are only expecting one single parameter, and that parameter is going to be execution context. And that is what we are passing it over here by checking this box. And we say done, save. And publish. Okay, so once it's published, we'll head over to the form. And what we should be expecting is once we reload the form, we should be expecting a form notification being shown with a text called as whatever the name is, right, of that particular superhero. And then it would be saying powering up. Yeah, so it's published. Going back to this form, and then let's just refresh it. And there you go. Now we have Airwalker powering up. Let's go to Iron Man. If you go to Iron Man, it shows Iron Man powering up, right? So now we are using this dynamic text from the form and then showing some kind of notification. Okay. Similarly, you can do a lot of other things as well. And most of the things are available in this on this documentation. Now, we did some simple things. We didn't do anything complex yet. So let's look at how that looks like. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this file. And then I'm going to go back and I am going to delete this library. Now, as soon as I remove this library, it's going to remove all the references from the events as well. So if I remove this, see the event went away. So now I don't have any events. Yeah. I'm going to save it and publish it. And once it completes publishing, I'm going to delete the web resource, or maybe we can keep it. So anyway, this will take time to get it completed. What I want to show here is now coming back to our Visual Studio Code and what are the industry standard. The way I showed you right now is pretty typical. But is it the industry standard? Is it the way people do JavaScripting? The answer is no. That's a basic JavaScript practice to get you started, but that is not the industry standard. The industry standard is a little complicated than what I showed you. So because it has some complexity to it, and it doesn't have any standards. JavaScript doesn't have any standards. What I did is I created, now I added it to my existing tool called as Dataverse DevTools. So in Visual Studio Code, if you have not installed this extension, you can go to extensions and you can search for Dataverse DevTools. Okay, and then you can install this tool. Now I've already installed it right on my machine. As soon as you install it, you should see this Dataverse icon appear on your activity bar. You can click on it, and then you can create your new connections by clicking on this button, provide the URL, select your authentication type, and then you can proceed. Once you have the connections created, you can connect to the connections. And as soon as you connect to those connections, this icon would become green. So let's see how that happens. It's still connecting, and then there you go, right? So now I know that I'm connected to this particular environment. And then these are all my entities. These are all my web resources. Now what I'm going to do is I am gonna, so again, part of the extension is you can initiate your TypeScript project for Dataverse, and you can also initiate JavaScript project for your for Dataverse. So if you right click in this Explorer pane, you see these two options: create Dataverse JavaScript project, create Dataverse TypeScript project. I'm going to select JavaScript project for today. And now it asks for a namespace. So I'm going to do 0 to hero. And then it initialized the project for me. And now it's installing, it's doing the npm install, installing a lot of other things. Now you'd see that I have tons of files here that I've added. The reason is because when we are talking about industry standards, we always talk about ESLint. ESLint helps you to keep your code consistent, not formatting wise, but then consistent in a way that it will provide you warnings if you're incorrectly using things or incorrectly assigning things, things like that, right? So ESLint helps you with those kind of things. Prettier makes code formatting consistent across all the developers. So it helps you for code review processes. So those are the kind of some pretty neat things that I've installed on my project. And I've also installed something called as Webpacks. Webpacks is nothing but it is a bundler tool. So what it does is it takes your source files, bundles it up, creates a new destination file, and that destination file is what you need to upload in JavaScript in Dataverse. So we'll look into that as well in a minute. Yeah. So now here what I want to do is I'm gonna go and create a new file, and this time I also let me just reopen this again. I found an issue last night which I haven't fixed yet. Okay, so now if I right click it, why is it not coming? Hold on, let me give it a minute. Okay, there you go. So now you have this option called as add Dataverse JavaScript file. Okay, it appears on any folder you click. So I clicked on source folder. I'm not adding it on any of these web resource folders because what I'm expecting is all my source files will be in my source folder and all my Webpack bundles will be in my script folder. So I'm going to right click my source file, say add Dataverse JavaScript file. I'm going to name it as super demo. And then you can see this is how it loaded the structure for you. So it gave you export, it gave you what the name of your variable is going to be, and then the name of your file. So it already loaded onload function, execution context, and whatnot, right? It also provided you with an example. So some neat things happening here. So let's take a different example. So in this example, what we're going to do is, let me run this. So what we're going to do is based on this field called show hide power stats. If I click on no, I save it, the power stats gets hidden. If I select yes and save it, then the power stats will appear. So that is what we're going to do using the JavaScript function. Yeah. So going back to our code here. So as you can see, we might not need this, so we're going to remove it. We will be concentrating more on the on save because that is what we saw in the demo. We saw on save, some things are happening, right? So I'm going to add one more function called as on save. And then again, following the same syntax here, I can just follow as is, right? So function, and then I can utilize this new statement from like a snippet from Visual Studio Code. I can use that, remove the name because this is going to be my name of the function. I don't need any parameters, and then I can just come here. Okay. Now, if I do a save, this is where Prettier comes in handy. It just automatically formats the code for you. That's a setting, and that setting is actually in the preferences settings and save format on save. Yeah, that's a setting that I had done. That allows it to say format on save using Prettier. So on save here, what I'm going to do is I have to first get that attribute value, right? So this attribute, not that. Going back here, this is the attribute value that we need. So we'll first do that similar to what we done earlier, same thing. But here now we'll use let. Let is another function, another command that just allows you to declare variables. So let show hide power stats is equal to, I'll use form context dot get attribute and then attribute name, right? So using same thing, using this level up tool, go here, I copy this attribute name, paste it over here, and then say get value. Now, as you can see, it also Prettier also added the semicolon automatically whenever you paste things, whenever you save things, it will format the code for you. So you don't have to keep track of it. It's pretty neat. OK, so now I've got the value of that particular show hide thing. And that value is going to be your Boolean variable because as you can see, it is yes and no, right? So either it is going to give you 0 or if it's going to give you 1 or true or false, right? Now, once I have that, I want to hide this section. So to hide this section, first I have to get to that section. And to get to that section, I have to go through tabs. So let me just refresh it once here. So these are tabs, right? So these are two tabs. Under these tabs, we have sections. And under the sections, we have attributes. So if I have to hide this this particular section, I have to first get the tab. And from tab, I have to go and find a section and then hide the section. That is the way your code will work. Yeah. So going back here, let's go and get the tab. So now, how do we get the tab? Let's go back to that documentation and then see if we can find anything. Now, if you want to find it, you can just search it here. And there you go, right? Form context UI.tabs. You can open it up. And then that's the code. Yeah. So I just copy it, I paste it over here. And then now what goes in ARG? So you can read through it and then you know that ARG is nothing but the name of the tab. Okay, so going back to our form and using this nice level up tool, I can get the name of my tab. Same thing. Now I can go and get a section which is called power stats. Yeah. Now for power stats, again, I can go back here. I can say section. And then here is the section. And then I can do, so it tells me use a tab object and then do the sections in this, right? So I copy this part. I use my tab as tab general and then paste the rest of the things. Now, again, ARG is nothing but the section name. So for section name, what I'm going to do is go back here. And this is my section name. I'm just going to copy it, paste it over here, and that's it. So now I've got my section. If I'm looking at the documentation, I can see that I can set the visibility here. So I can use this function. So I go here again, copy this, and it takes in a Boolean parameter. It takes in yes, and it takes in no. So I can do section power stats dot set visible. And then inside this, I have to provide a Boolean control or Boolean value. That Boolean value is going to come from here because my show hide PS is always going to be a Boolean value. Save it. So now, once you have your code completed, you can go to your npm scripts. The reason why you have to go here is because we're using Webpacks. Webpacks actually tries to compile your code and then create an appropriate bundled file. And all the configuration is available over here. So you can see all this configuration is done for you. So I'm going to just build it for development purposes. And it says, OK, it created a superhero demo.js under the output file. So if I open this up, I'll see superhero demo.js here, which will look quite different from what you have coded. Right? It looks a little different. OK. So now what I can do is, the nice thing about the Dataverse DevTool extension is I can upload this file directly from VS Code. I don't have to go manually. So you know how we did this manually before? I don't have to do that. I can just right click it here and then say upload and publish web resource. Now here it will give me an option whether I have to upload as a new web resource or whether I have to link it to an existing web resource. But because this is a new web resource, I'm going to select as upload as a new web resource. And it's going to ask me which solution you want to add it to. So I'm going to say 0 to hero, right? Here it will ask me for a name. So superhero demo script 0 to hero. Superhero demo script is what my name is going to be. Then this is where it's asking for a unique name, and the same formula applies. Same format applies over here. I've provided an example as well. So scripts dot 0 to hero superhero.js, or maybe superhero/demo.js, and that would create a web resource and publish it as well. So now it's published. Let's go back to our solution and then just do a refresh. Okay, so now you can see that there's a web resource called a superhero demo script here. Yeah. Now let's go and configure this on the form. So add a library. Superhero. And this is the one. OK, so now when it comes to the event, it's going to be a little different. Remember when we actually created the initiated the JavaScript project, it gave us an option to provide a namespace, and the namespace was 0 to hero. Yeah. So that configuration is in the Webpack config, and it's provided under library. Yeah. So this is a namespace called 0 to hero, and this is what we want to use when we define a function. And this is called as multi-level namespacing. So why is it necessary? Is it helps you to identify where is this coming from, or who does this belong to, even without looking at the library, right? Because when you're debugging this and then you just see this function being called, you know exactly where it is coming from or who is responsible for the errors. Also, some few teams, if multiple teams are working, it's pretty easy to identify which team is responsible for creating these bugs or responsible for fixing these issues that occur on the scripts. Okay. This next thing that you have is the name of your variable, which is defined over here, which is kind of simple, similar to your file name. Okay, so that's second level of namespacing. And then comes the third, which is this onload method. Okay, and then passing the execution context, done. The same thing we have to do for save as well. So save, but instead of onload, we will have onsave. But in onSave function, I have not passed in the execution context. And there's a reason. What I did is actually captured my form context on a global level within that function, within that superhero demos context, and then captured it on the form load. So now form load has form context, but form context is defined on a higher scale. So that's why I'm able to use form context within save as well. So I don't have to pass in the execution context here. Save it. And then publish it. Okay. Waiting for publish to finish. Let's refresh it. Okay, so now my power states have been shown. I'm going to change it to no, and then save it, and then power states is hidden. Change it to yes, save it, power states are shown. Now, someone had asked me in the past sessions as well, like, can you do this on change? It's simple, right? You just change this to on, build it. Yeah. Then once the build is completed, you deploy it. Now this deploy becomes pretty easy because now you have already deployed it once. The second deploy doesn't even ask you anything. It just directly goes and deploys because it knows the deployment settings. So it saves it in this file called as dvdt linker file. Okay. Now once it's done, we just have to remove it from onsave. So I'm going to remove it from onsave. And then instead of that, I'm going to put this on the on change event. Then I'm going to copy this function name on change. Same thing, right? Save it, publish it. And then let's refresh it. Now, if I change this to no, yes, no, and that's it. Okay. Okay, so the next thing that I want to discuss is how to do this on a ribbon. Like can we use JavaScripts for ribbon buttons as well? So let's go back to our code. And this time, let's add a new file called as, so new Dataverse file called as superhero ribbon demo. Okay, so superhero ribbon demo. Now in this one, I actually don't need the onload method. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this to say run power up. Okay. Now ribbons are a little different. Ribbons also, if we need anything from our form, we still need the form context, because that is the way we interact with the form attributes, or showing the notification, or getting or setting the values on attributes, or even on tabs or sections. We still need form context, but form context is not now provided from an execution context, but rather form context is directly available to us here. And then I'm going to show you how. So this is going to be my ribbon. It's going to be pretty simple. I have my form context. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first get the name of my superhero, similar to what we did earlier. So I'm going to say let name is equal to form context dot get attribute. Then that form context name. Now, by this time, you should be very familiar with what I'm going to do, right? So get the name, and then get value. Okay, and then now I'm going to show the same form notification, but a different flavor of it. So form context dot UI dot set form notification. And then I'm going to use, I'm going to say my name of my superhero, followed by is powered up. Okay, level is going to be info, and then this is going to be anything. It could be whatever you want. And this actually helps you to clear it up. Maybe we add one more button called, one more thing called as clear power up function. We can use this same thing, or maybe this. Instead of set, we'll say clear form notification. And then we will use this name. Okay. Now this was not in my script. I just added it on the fly. So let's see if it works. Yeah. OK, so I have two functions. One function is going to show you a form notification whenever you click it. The other function is going to clear the form notification, whatever is on the form. So let's go and build this first. So now I'm seeing sh ribbon demo appear over here, and I can go and deploy this. It's a new file, goes back in the same thing. So 0 to hero superhero ribbon demo. Okay, and then same thing, scripts hero ribbon.js. Okay, going back to the form and then seeing if I can see the script in the web resources. And yes, I can see it. Now, whenever you're adding buttons, you also need some icons on the buttons, right? And now those icons are generally SVG icons. So I use this website called ionic.io. And then it gives you all this nice outlined, filled, sharp images, and you can just search. So now I want to do rocket. So it has this rocket. You can do filled, you can do sharp. So I like the sharp better here. So I'm going to click it. I'm going to download the SVG. Okay. So I have my image with me. Oh, I need another one for clear. Clean. Let's see if we can find maybe clear. This sounds good. This looks good. So I'm going to download this as well. Okay, going back to the code. I have I don't have an images folder over here, so I'm going to create a folder called as images, and then I'm going to drop both of these images in this folder, and then just to give a nice name to it, clear or sh underscore clear.svg, and then for rocket sh underscore. I have both of these images, so I'm going to go back to my browser and then upload that under web resources as well. So new, more, web resources, upload the file. It's going to be under images. Let's do the rocket first. Images, same folder structure you can use. Rocket.svg. And yeah, I took in the type as well, like based on whatever you're uploading. Okay. And another one, more web resource, load a file, clear. Let's see, clear images slash 02 hero slash clear.svg. Okay, so now how do I add buttons? So for that, I'm going to use the new interface provided by Microsoft for editing the ribbons. So I'm going to use, I have to go to my app. So you click on these three dots, and then instead of clicking on edit, you say edit in preview. This opens up a new preview page for app editing. Then you go to superhero. Sorry, you click on these three dots next to superhero, and then it gives you an option to edit the command bar. Once you click it, you get this option of where you want to, which command bar you want to edit. So I want to add the buttons on the main form, right? So main form it is, say edit. Now I can just say where I want to place my buttons. So I want to place it next to delete. So I select the delete, then I select the new command. It adds a new command here. I give the label, and that would be power up. And then here icon, I can select the web resource icon. I can add a web resource, select for rocket. Yeah, say add. Now it shows up over here. I can provide tooltip descriptions, all the other things. Now here is the main thing. You can either write a PowerFX function, or you can even upload a JavaScript. I want to do a JavaScript instead because that's where we are focusing now, right? So again, similar to what we have done earlier, we have to first upload a library. That library will be ribbon. Yeah, so this ribbon library. Then same thing that we did earlier here as well is like with that namespace 0 to hero dot and the variable name from here dot and then the function name, which is run power app. Okay, you can pass in the parameter. Now in here you need the form context because that is what we are using here, right? So for that you say add parameter, and inside parameter you would select primary control. So primary control gives you the form context directly. Okay, then we need one more, but that button will be clear. Same thing. I can even use icons from the standard library as well. So these are some of the icons that are available over here. I'm not sure if clear is available. Let's check. Yeah, there is, right? So we can just say clear default, and then that is, we don't need a web resource anymore. Same thing, go to run JavaScript, and then let's just copy the JavaScript here. This time the function name will be clear power app. Okay, here we are not actually accepting parameter, but you would have to do that eventually, but we'll just skip for now. And then we'll say save and publish. Okay, it's published. So now I can refresh it. And there are my buttons, right? So now if I click on power up, there it is. I can see the notification. If I click on clear, and it didn't clear up. See, that's why I told, like, this is something that I did on the fly. I should have tested this earlier, but I did not. And probably I know what the issue is. Probably it's the form context, because I'm not passing in the form context. So we can test it out pretty easily. So while I'm doing that, if anyone has any question, feel free to come off mute and then ask the question.
I had one earlier today, Danish. It was around just the way that you are compiling files. You can see that there are lots of functions, or two functions in the same files, or multiple, I should say, for different files. Is there any performance gain in doing that, single files, maybe per function or per context, if you will, in loading files, as opposed to having multiple files?
Yes, it does, because so first of all, it's just for the construction or the maintenance of your files as well. That's one benefit of doing separate files, per form or per per ribbon. Maintenance is one thing, and then also is performance, because all these JavaScript files loads simultaneously. If you have one gigantic file which is like, let's say 5 MB, then it's going to take time to load. Whereas if you have 5 files of 1 MB each, then all of them are going to load parallelly. So your load time actually increases.
That's cool. Nice, nice. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Anybody else have questions? Go for it, Betty.
Yeah, it's something more about standards, no? Because when we use Webpack, we create source maps too, no?
Correct.
So we can go to the original code.
Right.
But
it does help.
Usually I don't see them used in production, let's say, no? But
So I'll
yeah.
show you what I do for production. So if you see here, there's a build Webpack for production, right?
Yeah.
If you go and look at this big gigantic file, which is not minimized, I can use the production build, and then there you go. See how tiny it became, right? You won't be able to do those kind of things when you're not using any bundler. So it's not just use Webpack. That's not what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
any kind of bundler would help you achieve this kind of goals. Now, this is the file that you should be having in your production. See, it's so clean, small file which takes very less time to download. Now, the good thing is, and Betim actually uh, added that point as well, is like you can see that there's a source map URL. So even if you want to debug it, you can still debug your local file using Fiddler, and you can actually go to the source file, and you're actually debugging this file instead of debugging this file, which is obfuscated, right? You don't know what O is, what T is. It's all obfuscated. So you're actually going to the main file for debugging because it has the mappings available over here. So those are kind of the benefits of using any kind of bundler.
Yeah. And I'm a great fan of TypeScript, so I really need these source maps, no?
Yeah.
And actually, I use a sort of a hack, and I upload the source maps in Dataverse, even in production. I upload them as JavaScripts, and then you can use them without Fiddler, no?
But why do you want to do that? If the map files are already available over here, you can still use Fiddler to go from this file
Yes, but
to
you
the
have to
source
have
file.
the correct version of your code then to use Fiddler with the version that you have uploaded in your production.
Right. Why would you not have the correct version in your local?
You have to, let's say, match your version of production. So you have to use tags in Git, for example, and then check out that version, locally build it, then use Fiddler, and then it's a lot of work, no?
Okay.
If you already have them in the right version in the solution, it's easier, and you don't even need to have your Visual Studio or code in hand, no? You can just debug it in Chrome DevTools.
You can,
Actually,
but yeah, it's risky to upload map files, especially on production. That's what at least I would say, because then what's the point of obfuscating all of your files over here? But again, I mean, it's something that
minimizing,
is
I would
debatable. Yeah,
say. It's minimizing for performance, no? It
Yeah.
depends on who's the owner of the code also, no?
Correct.
Victor, you're on mute,
you're on
Victor.
mute. You're still on
Victor,
mute.
you're still mute.
Sorry,
Eh,
I know Danish
yeah.
has a hard stop now, so we won't keep him. But if you have more questions, I think at Dama you have more question. You can send my way. I can forward it to Danish, and we can do it. I'll just finish the recording for now. Whomever wants to stay, if you have questions, you can post the questions. I know Danish has to go. I have to go pretty shortly here too. I'll try to get some questions written down or send it over to Danish. Thanks, Danish, for doing this.
Yeah, no worries. And